So hey everyone, welcome to part 1C of the Mech tutorial. This time we're going to be covering how to make our mechs turn. To start with, I'd like to give a brief illustration of the terms pitch, roll, and yaw if you're unfamiliar with those. They're sometimes used to describe the rotations of certain vehicles like airplanes, for example, and they're also what we're going to be using on our torso servos for our mech. So out of those three options, the main two that we're going to be using are pitch and yaw. There's actually a logic block called a turret handler that gives pitch and yaw outputs, and that's that's part of what goes into our servos. So I'd like to just give a brief example of what pitch and yaw look like. So to begin with, yaw is how we're going to turn side to side, so it goes like this pretty much. And then there's also pitch. This is essentially how we're going to turn up and down, like this. I can't do this physically, but you could also use that for a front flip or a back flip. Although we don't really use roll on our torsos, or at least I don't, I will still give a couple of examples just if you're interested. The advanced starter kit actually can use a roll. It has an animation that is essentially like a sideways flip or dodge kind of thing that uses roll. Another example would be, say, a cartwheel. That's also not something that I'm going to risk doing. My room is kind of messy and I'm going to kill myself if I try a cartwheel, but that's another example of roll. That essentially covers, the primary gist of this video. Now that we've discussed this, I'll see you in game. We'll discuss how to, build this, what the rest of the logic we'll need is. So, yeah, thank you. See you guys in game. Hope this helps. So, hey everyone. Now that we're in the game, we're going to begin with something called the aim part core. This is used basically to increase the strength of our torso servos. It gives them more mass. Basically, aim parts provide stabilization, and having a whole structure of them is good for our servos, pretty much. So we're going to be adding some relatively big aim parts, and quite a lot of them. So some of you might be wondering how we get past the compression limit, since that's set at 5 and we need a lot more than 5. You can bypass this by basically duplicating a lot of them but moving them slightly downwards. It'll not register it as compressed if it's not occupying exactly the same space. So you get this kind of onion shell looking effect over here. This is done to add a lot of parts without triggering the compression warning. So we're gonna do that, and you can do that in pretty much any direction you want to as well. So yeah, we have aim parts now. After our aim parts, we're gonna build our servos, right? Those are the parts we use to actually turn our torso. For these, I like to use a little mnemonic, memory trick, whatever you want to say. Well, it's more, I guess it's easier to see with this little picture here, but basically, servos have a bottom part and a top part, right? And since we need to move in two directions, two axes of rotation, we need to have two servos. So knowing what order to place them in, it's a little bit important, because if you, at least from what I've had happen anyways, if you do it differently. It'll only go one of the two directions. It'll only go like, either yaw or pitch, but not both. So doing it this way is kind of important. Basically, it's just the bottom part of the servo goes with the aim parts. Then there's a top that goes kind of just, in the air, out of the way. I don't know, for us, that's going to be, that'll be yaw, I believe. Once we have our yaw servos present, we can go on and add the pitch servos. For pitch, the bottom goes like, again, we're going to do a little, compression bypasser thing, and we're going to put the bottom of the pitch servos in the same spot as the top from the yaw servos. So they're going to basically be like a little, pair of servos floating in the air. And then lastly, the top of the top for the pitch servos goes into your torso. That'll allow the whole assembly to connect together, basically. So something else we're going to be doing here is adding head meshes. Similar to the, limbs, they're also used for increasing like their, strength pretty much, adding more mass to them. Just, be sure again that your head meshes don't collide with anything else, they don't weld with anything, otherwise it'll, connect incorrectly. So, just try to, put them in a spot where they won't inadvertently hit something else. Action towards 10 density here, just, good to have to keep in mind. So now that we've got the physical assembly that we need, it's, all built, we got the servos and everything, we're going to start the logic here. So, something we forgot to do last video, my fault, I should have mentioned it there, but it's servo stats. These are what, these are the torque, speed, and acceleration values that go into our servos, and, we need these for them to have the proper strength and, movement stats that they need. So I'm going to be giving them values for each of these real quick. For torque, I usually just recommend using a maxed out large constant integer. That's about the biggest single number you can achieve in EE without doing any multiplication or something. If you do need more torque, then feel free to do some operations with large constant integer, but for now we're just going to go with just a max constant integer. For speed and acceleration, I don't know, I usually do 40 for this. It's generally speaking, it's a kind of small number. Like, I've seen people do like 20 or something. Usually it ranges from like, I don't know, about 10 to 50, I guess, maybe 100. Kind of depends on the build probably as well, but for mechs anyways, that's usually about where I see it ranged, to. So we're gonna give all our servos each of these values, leave the angle just, blank for the moment. That's where all of our, animation and movement logic goes. That'll be in part 2. Once we've got our servo stats present, we're going to go on and start adding the logic for our, turning, our steering, all those things. So, oh my goodness, Mech is doing some ballet or some shit. Oh, right. Yeah, so I mentioned this last video, set your servo. So go to the configure tool and set your servo angle to 0 if you don't want that to happen. I guess that's where I found it out. It wouldn't really matter that much once you, add angle logic. That would basically, for lack of a better word, override that default angle, but since we're keeping it blank for the rest of part 1, I do recommend setting that to 0 just so, you know, your mech will stand up straight. So we're going to start with the logic for the steering at this point. This block is a global to relative block. This goes into our torso, essentially. We'll also need a mouse 3D position sensor. This will basically give us the position of the world, the position of our mouse in the world. It measures it in 3D, so it's a vector. What this will do basically is plug it into the global to relative. This converts the global coordinates from the, you know, mouse sensor into relative coordinates relative to, you know, that sensor, which goes into our torso, and by extension makes it relative to the whole mech. So this is basically what gives us the data for our, you know, turning, but it's, you know, at the moment it's a vector, and our servos, they take number inputs, right? So we need another part to kind of bridge that gap, for lack of a better word. So for that, we're going to use what's called a turret handler. This outputs pitch and yaw outputs based on, you know, some kind of vector inputs. In this case, that's our global to relative. So you're gonna notice in this video, mine is like flopping around, flimsy, weird. This is generally because usually if this happens, it means one of your values is negative, which, you know, that's okay. That happens fairly often. If you do notice that one of your values is negative, well, first of all, the way you notice that is, generally speaking, if you notice that one of your, you know, axes of rotation is inverted, like if you're trying to, you know, move your mouse to the right and you're turning left, for example, that's a case of, oh, you know, my turning is inverted. And in that case, you can fix that by making the, like I said, the yaw, I guess, make the yaw value negative with a negative input logic block. Then you can plug it back into your servo angle and it'll turn the right way. Same goes for pitch if that's inverted.